Hello and welcome back. So, I am excited to tell you that we almost have a full application built for us that what it does is you can load in different shaders, different WebGL shaders, and this is courtesy of Shader Doodle by Merle, who we interviewed in this episode. It was great talking with him, and this is really exciting and easy to use, easy to work with. So we can load shaders. We can actually edit the shader code with a project called lit-code. The very last thing we need to do here, though, is actually record that GIF. So we want to be able to set the number of frames, set the milliseconds between frames so it takes snapshots, and then be able to press this button and record and save that GIF. We have an alert that pops up when we press this button. So let's actually take action on this. But first, I think we need some kind of UI here. So we want to almost disable this button, and I feel like we want to get rid of most of this UI while you're recording so you don't keep setting things while it's in that process. So let's do that. I feel like we need some kind of progress indicator to tell us where we are in the recording process, because it takes a little time, because right now we have, maybe 500 milliseconds between frames, and if we capture 6 frames, it's going to take around 3 seconds. So we need a progress indicator, and lucky for us, Spectrum Web Components delivers. So let's go back into Doodle.ts, and again, this is our only component in this entire application. I could do a better job organizing, but that's not the focus of what I'm here to do today. So let's add this import SP progress bar right at the top here, and then we're going to scroll down to find this left-hand column, and right at the end of this column, we're going to put the progress bar. So let's see what that looks like. It's going to be kind of a mess just because, yeah, here it is. Here it is hiding out way down below. But like I said, we want to show this or this progress bar. But we're gonna get some help designing this with the help of reactive reflected properties. Sometimes I like to use a reflection to put my application in a certain state so I can design against that state and code against that state. So let's do that. We're gonna add a recording property right at the top here. And now let's jump over to our doodle.css, our big CSS style file for everything in this application and component alike. It doesn't really matter where we put this, but I want to put it next to the other recording settings. And then we're going to add these extra CSS rules right here where when we set the recording property to true, because it's reflected, because we set it up to reflect, the attribute will also be present. So we can say with this web component, when it has the recording attribute on it, we're going to look and any child element of the main column, the right-hand side, we're going to display none. So our entire right-hand column is going to disappear when we're recording. And similarly, the record settings. Now the record settings is this area right here. So we're going to make that disappear too when recording is set to true. And so with those CSS rules in place, we can then open up these dev tools. And then in our Doodle app here, we can say recording. And all of a sudden, we have the application state matching what we wanted. Except, that progress bar, it's actually kind of missing. So where did that go? And I think it's just because we need to set the display of the recording process element here. I'm not going to mess with dev tools anymore. I'm going to go straight to Doodle.ts and set this to true. There we go. We can actually see this now, so we're all set. Now I want to add one last variable here, another reactive property we decorate by using state, and that's going to be frameRecording. So which frame are we recording right now? And we're gonna every time we take that snapshot, it's gonna increment one up. And we can use this in our progress bar here and say the value of the progress is equal to the frame we're recording, so that's 0 initially, divided by the frames to record times 100 to give us that percentage. So when we're recording that first frame, maybe number 1, and if we were recording 5 frames, that's 1/5 or 0.20 times 100, so that's 20%, which is our progress. So let's just fudge those numbers and see that 20%. So let's do 1 out of 5. And so yeah, we get that 20% progress right here. But I do want to change this 5 back to a 10 because I think 10 is a good number of frames to record as a default. And the very last thing to do here is add the Record Gif function. We need to replace this alert. So it's going to be broken up into two functions here, and I'll explain why. So we have Record Gif, and we're taking the 2D context of the Shader Doodle canvas. Now, Shader Doodle is set up with a WebGL context. That's how it works. But Merle was smart enough to know, as he was authoring this, that people are going to want to scrape the pixels in a 2D context and do what I'm doing, capture that frame. So I'm super glad I can do this. Otherwise, I don't know how I get in there and get that context. So this is great. We're going to use something called Gif Encoder, which I found online to encode the GIF. We don't have that installed yet. We'll get there. So we're going to set some encoder parameters like set repeat. I want this GIF to continuously repeat itself, keep looping over and over again. So that's what this is going to do. And we need to write a GIF header. And then we're going to set the frameRecording to 0. So we can start working our way up from there and increment as each snapshot takes place. And then we're going to set recording to true to put us in that state where the entire application kind of disappears and we're focused on that recording and see that progress bar like we just designed. And then we're going to use a timer. This is going to be, we're going to use set interval. We're going to increment this frame. We're going to take the 2D canvas context and duplicate our editable div, our text editable div, that contains the custom message that we want overlaid. We're going to take that text and we're going to overlay that over the context because we can't just render that div in there. We need to kind of duplicate that effort because we're working in a canvas. And then all we need to do is add the frame. And if the current frame that we're recording is greater than or equal to the frames we want to record, then we're going to finish that recording. And how we finish that recording is we call upon the encoder to finish itself, and then we turn off the recording mode, and we're going to capture the blob from that GIF encoder, and then we're going to open a new window with that blob where we can just right-click and save that GIF. So this should all work, but of course, like I said, we're missing this GIF encoder right here. So let's head over to our package.json and install that GIF encoder. So I'm adding Gifjs to our list of dependencies here. I'm gonna npm install that. And now that that's npm installed, this is where we run into trouble and we need web dev server to help us out. So let's take a look at Gifjs and see what it looks like here. So if you look inside the source, we have some CoffeeScript files. This is not the best. Really, we want ES modules to import. So there is a build file right here, but I've really found it can't be imported as an ES module. It's one of these older packages. And I guess our first hint is that I don't know anybody who uses CoffeeScript anymore. And so, we can't import these CoffeeScript files either. But really, everything in this package is a wrapper around Gif Encoder. And so this Gif encoder is actually converted from ActionScript 3 a long time ago. I remember the Flash days. So yeah, we're going to use this. Unfortunately, though, look at this. We're doing require here. This is CommonJS. This isn't cool either because we're trying to use modern ES modules here. We can't import CommonJS, or hey, maybe we can actually. So we're going to try some things here. Back in our package.json, let's add rollup plugin CommonJS. Yes, we can use a rollup plugin inside Web Dev Server to consume CommonJS. It doesn't necessarily work all the time, I've found, but in this case it does. But it's really handy because we're in such a inconvenient spot right now between a lot of older packages using CommonJS and we want everyone to use ES modules because, it's 2022. It's native in our browser. We have this stuff. So we have to deal with older packages somehow. And luckily we can do that with this rollup plugin in Web Dev Server. So let's get this saved and installed. And then in our Web Dev Server config here, we're going to say import CommonJS. And just like that lit CSS plugin, we're going to wrap it to be compatible with Web Dev Server. And lastly, we're going to add this to our plugin. So we're going to add this plugin and include only what's in the Gifjs in the node modules folder. So let's try this. So assuming that works, we should be able to import Gif Encoder from gifencoder.js. And if we scroll down to where we use it, everything should be fine. This doesn't seem to be complaining anymore because it is present. So fingers crossed, this is going to work. CommonJS plugin. So let's restart Web Dev Server because installing a new package like this and adding new configuration, it needs to restart. All right, moment of truth. Record and save. Looks promising. It doesn't look promising anymore. Something weird is happening. Let's open up our DevTools. Remaining is not defined. What does that mean? It's in LZW Encoder. .js, and I researched this before. I am not surprised it doesn't work. So let's open up Gifjs. Let's look at LZW encoder here. Let's review what it says is wrong. Remaining is not defined. So let's look for remaining in this file. So remaining is part of this function called encode, and we are using encode obviously, but it's not actually declared here. It needs a let, a const, a var, or something, right? It turns out that this package is so old that it's not using strict mode, and by its very nature, ES modules require strict mode. They need to conform to strict mode to be able to import. So this is broken, right? There's nothing we can do. Except there is. What we need to do is there's actually more variables that if we did fix it, they would also need to be declared. So there's 3 variables that aren't declared that need to be declared to be able to import this file in strict mode as an ES module. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our package.json. We're going to use another rollup plugin. This plugin is called Insert. So install that. And then in our web dev server config here, we're going to add prepend from the insert plugin. Prepend is exactly what it sounds like. We're going to prepend some code into a file on the fly with web dev server. And like the other ones, of course, we need to wrap it up as a web dev server plugin from rollup. And then right before the CommonJS plugin, I think the order here is important. We're going to add plugin prepend. And we're going to prepend some variable declarations to LZW encoder.js. So we're going to say var remaining current pixel and n bits, and then some line breaks. And so it's basically like we're taking this code and going back to our LZW encoder class. And of course, my IDE is complaining you shouldn't be editing files in this node modules folder, but just for demonstration purposes, here's what it's prepending to this file. This is what web dev server will do on the fly, so we don't need to do this here. But this is what it's going to look like when it's served. So now again, we'll restart web dev server, npm run serve. Now, fingers crossed, this will save our GIF. So let's try this out. Record and save GIF. And by some sheer luck, I guess, it did work. I did have to do a lot of investigation to figure out how to get this to work. So your mileage may vary on this stuff. It was lucky that those were the only problems we had. It could have been a lot worse. So you might find some packages that there's just no good way to handle it. I do have some strategies that I do that we'll cover in future episodes when things get a lot worse. But for now, we just kind of needed those 2 plugins to kind of massage this GIF encoder to be working for us. As you can see, it worked out. We're making GIFs. We're making these GIFs happen. And now we can actually save this GIF. Let's just call it test.gif. I'm going to open up a new tab and just put in the tab, and yeah, it's an actual GIF that we've saved from Shader Doodle. Look at these lines. I mean, this is truly a GIF because you can really see the color separation here because GIFs do have that limited palette. But yeah, going back to our application here, it kind of looks like we're done. We've put all the features we need to in here, and there's not too much to add. But I do have one more step, and that step is to really tie a nice bow on how great this web dev server ecosystem is. So in the next step, we're going to create a build of our application, and because we're using this rollup-based plugin system for web dev server, you'll see just how easy that is. So stay tuned for one last step for this GIF making application powered by the amazing web component Shader Doodle.